Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake. In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown showing.
Welcome to the sound of one man clapping. I am the one man coming to you direct from the bunker. The perimeter hasn't yet been breached by the cicada horde of Australian summer, but I don't know how much longer I can hold out. If you don't hear from me next week, send help. Send lots of help with alcohol. This is a podcast about board gaming culture, and growing old gracelessly. Sharing with you today all the games that were. We're going to talk about what's coming with incoming! 4 exclamation marks. And we'll hit the crowdfunding vibes with FOMOMOFO, and then we're going to tackle the literal voices in my head before giving someone the clap. On with the show. I just want to kick off this week by saying if you haven't listened to our last episode, you need to go back and listen to that. I had the incredible pleasure of interviewing Paul Grogan of Gaming Rules fame. He's a fantastic mind and contributor to this beautiful hobby of ours. And it was an open, transparent, and incredible chat about his life, the way he started. And I don't mean who he met and how he got hooked up, but really who he is and how he started with board games and what board games mean to him. It was a really special chat. If you haven't listened to that, go back and do that. And after that, come back and we'll talk about kicking off 2025 with a bang. It has been a stellar 2 weeks of gaming because, of course, last week we released the Paul Grogan interview. And 2025 has been very good to me so far. If you've been following along at home, you know I have had a bundle of time off. I go back to work in a couple of days. I got one more day off tomorrow. I'm hoping to squeeze just a little more gaming in tomorrow before I head back to reality. Yeah, back to reality. Okay. Got to work for a living. Got to pay for the game somehow. Anyway, the games that were. I got in a game of Civolution with Super Trooper. Now, Civolution I only recently got. It has only recently been released in Australia. And I'd had one solo game. And I convinced Super Trooper to give it a go. And I really enjoyed it. You know, we've talked about Civolution here. Civolution's out and about. There's a lot of talk about Civolution. Civolution is very point salad-y. It's very Stefan Feld. You have dice that you chuck, and you're absolutely beholden to those dice and what you can do with those dice. And yet somehow you may only have a couple of dice available. You still have 4 or 5 different options open to you. I'm a big fan of Castles of Burgundy, have been for quite some time. I've clocked up a lot of plays of Castles of Burgundy, and I really enjoy Civolution. I'm not sure Super Troopers sold on it just yet, and I think that's the way with the first game of Civolution, maybe even the first game or two. I think you've got to settle in and really understand what you're doing from the get-go. Had a great game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, of course, Civolution is by Stefan Feld, art by Dennis Lohausen, and published by Pegasus Spiel and Deep Print Games. I'm not going to labor on about Civolution because we've already talked about it in another episode. But Civolution is excellent. I really, really like Civolution, and I'm looking forward to playing it more solo and playing it more with other people at the table. Later that day, Dusty joined us at the table, and we got one off my shelf of firsts. This is a game that I really wanted to play for a while. And it's just about finding the right alignment of planets, really, to get this one to the table. And it's not that there was hesitation or reticence on the part of the boys to play this one, but it doesn't really... I just don't think it innately, on first pass, sort of ticked a lot of boxes. And that's Skyrise. So I own Skyrise, the Ultra Edition. It's got like a 9-stage platform that you build. You put everything out. It's got a fantastic table presence. Every faction's got... buildings, not wooden towers. So Skyrise, go to play this with Dusty and Super Trooper. So Skyrise is basically an auction area control set collection. And what you've got is on the table, you've got 4 quadrants, and if you're playing with 4 people, they're all open, and if you play with 3 people, you're using 3 of the 4 quadrants, and one of them is not operational, and it doesn't affect the game at all, really. I think it just scales the game beautifully. And the first person who's going to go is going to put one of their buildings out in the middle island. And there are all these different little neighborhoods. They're all color-coded, and each of them also has a token on them. And all the buildings are different heights, and they have a number on their butts. So Super Trooper might have 1, 3, 12, 37, 52, 79, and 88 or whatever on his buildings. And I'm going to have 6 totally different numbers. And they're all balanced in some magical way. And Super Trooper's going to have 6 others. And so Dusty's leading. He's going to drop his building out, and he's going to put out his 12. I've got to put out a building that is higher than that in a neighborhood adjacent. And then it goes to Super Trooper, and he's got to put a building out that's higher than that in a neighborhood adjacent to where I have put my building. So he can't go back to where the first building was. And this goes round and round the table until everyone passes, and the last building out wins the bid. They flip it over, they claim the neighborhood, they get the token in that neighborhood, and the tokens have a number of different icons on them, and there's 2 or 3 types of icons and tokens. And everyone else who bid gets their buildings back. And you go again. And you go straight into auctioning and bidding rather again. But that bid can start from the middle island, or it can start from any building that already exists out in the city. And you do this over and over and over again until the round ends. You do a mid-game scoring, and then you do it again with a second set of buildings that are pre-identified. They're off to one side. You bring them in, and you do another set of rounds, and you keep going until all the buildings are done. And when all the buildings are done, you look down at the set collection that you've managed, and you score it up. You also get to score for your buildings based on, it's like a 3-way scoring, so your white buildings will score based on how many of the white tokens, for example, are in yellow neighborhoods, whatever they are. It's a 3-way scoring with neighborhood, building, and tokens, and you can plan for that. It's tricky, but you can plan for it. It's fast. I think we watched a video for how to play Skyrise. It was only a 17-18 minute video. We did a 5-minute refresh before we started. It was really easy to get into and play. I think the whole game was maybe 70 minutes, and scoring was done in another 5 or 6, and I had a blast. I really liked Skyrise. I picked Skyrise up. This is the Kickstarter version, which I got after the fact from More Than Meeples. Shout out to More Than Meeples, guys. If you want Kickstarters and you miss the Kickstarter, they will often have it, and it's not hugely marked up. I mean, yes, you pay more because you weren't part of the campaign, but they've got to take all the risks. They've got to stock it and buy it and hold it till someone picks it up. But the guys at More Than Meeples, really competitive with this sort of stuff. I picked Skyrise up from them, I want to say at least in the first half of last year. So it's been on my shelf of firsts for at least half a year. I absolutely loved my first game of Skyrise. Absolutely loved it. I almost backed this. I looked at this when it was on Kickstarter, I want to say 2 years ago, and I was in, I was out, I was in, I was out. I think in the end it was just because I didn't quite have the funds to pull the pin. And it wasn't a lot even. Like, I think the Kickstarter might have been $110 or something, and whatever the shipping was. But that was for the Whiz Bang Everything. And this is Whiz Bang Everything. I mean, you've got the key to the city, which is metal, and you've got the token of the city, which is metal, and you've got all the tokens are wood, and all the bits are... It's beautiful. It's beautiful on the table. It's beautiful to hold. It's beautiful to touch. It's beautiful to play. Love the gameplay. And I know that both Dusty and Super Trooper enjoy that, and we'll get it to the table again. Because as I said, it's not a hard teach. If you haven't played Skyrise, guys, and you can get your hands on it in your game group, there's a 17 or 18 minute video. I think it's a Rodney Smith video. I think Watch It Play does it, and everyone loves Rodney. If Rodney says eat the tile, you eat the freaking tile. And loved Skyrise. Skyrise is by Gavin Brown, Sebastian Pochon, and Adam Wise, with art by Andrew Bosley of Everdell fame, and James Van Niekerk. Published by Roxley Games. The art's great. The art on the cards is great. The art on the boards is great. The art out in the city is great. It's clear. The iconography is clear. The colors are great. I loved everything about Skyrise, and I can't wait to play it again. From there, the same three of us, we had a really good day of gaming. We went in to play a game of fromage. Now, if you're not bilingual, like I am, and like most of Canada is, at least for part of our life, fromage means cheese in French. I think most of us know fromage, croissant, baguette. We've got the big three under our belts. But so fromage is about cheese. Now, I am mad for cheese, and I think that fromage is an excellent game. So fromage, oh God, where do you start with fromage? So fromage is basically, it's a great big wheel on the table. It's got 4 quadrants. So fromage, you can play less than 4, but no matter what expansions they bring out, you're never going to play more than 4 because you need a quadrant per player. And each of the 4 quadrants is a worker placement space where you can place a worker for resources, or you can place a worker to make some cheese. And the cheeses come in, I think, 3 different types. There's gold cheese, white cheese, blue cheese, and 3 different grades, which is related to their age, which is bronze, silver, and gold. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the particular gameplay because I will probably stuff that up, because this is going back about 2 weeks. But in Fromage, basically, you've got these little cheese shapes with a 2-dimensional dude pressed in the top, and you've got 3 of them, and you only ever have 3 workers. You don't unlock more. There's no way to get through more workers. And what you can do is you can only interact with the quarter of the wheel that's in front of you. So in that quarter of the wheel, you're going to be making you can make a type of cheese, and you can take a type of resource. So the resources are fruit, cows, building blocks, or cards. And cards are basically order fulfillment, so recipe fulfillment. And depending on whether you want to take 1, 2, or 3 of the resources, your little wheel of cheese will be pointing in a different direction. Because every round, this wheel of cheese spins 90 degrees. So if you want 3 of a resource, if that space is free, you put your little wheel of cheese down and it's facing left. And then it's going to take 3 rotations of that to come back to you, because you don't get to collect your workers until they're pointing back at you. If the workers are pointing at you, they're ready to go back to work. They're like, hey, boss, I finished collecting berries or wrangling cows or whatever it is, and they're ready to come back to work. And so you put your little worker out, and let's say you're going to get, I want to get berries. I want 2 berries. It's going down into the top section of my quadrant, pointing away from me. It's going to be 2 rotations before that comes back. And I know that worker is gone for 2 turns. It's going to be gone for 1 turn, rather, and it's back on the 2nd turn after that. And I'm going to get 2 berries out of the deal. And I'm going to drop a cheese. That sounds dirtier than it is. Drop a cheese. I'm going to drop a worker in the cheese making area. And again, depending on the age of that cheese, which is the quality of the cheese, which is the points it could earn, or the value of the cheese, whatever it is, the more valuable the cheese in whatever way, the further your worker is cranked around counterclockwise. So the most turns you will be out of a worker is 3 turns. And you only get 3 workers. So you really want to look at the board and balance what you're choosing, because if you don't plan well, you're going to get to a turn with no workers, and you'll be sitting, and you might have a huzzah of resources and high value cheeses in 1 turn, but then you will have no workers for one of those turns, and that might be worth it. It might be worth it to you. I don't know. Like, I played 1 game of Fromage. I really enjoyed it. I don't know that I played very well. You also have a player board in front of you that does a myriad of things. There's there's a berry set collection there where you're gathering jam and preserved fruit, and they multiply off each other. You herd cows into different areas, and they do different things. They give you bonuses, and you're also doing set collection on recipes. Oh, I might have won that game because I had 10 million recipes. One of the special powers on my player board, I was basically farming recipe cards every turn, and I was able to farm them, and I got really lucky on the draw. I was able to fulfill a recipe card almost every turn, which was amazing. And look, it was a blast. It's an easy teach. It's an easy game. I think Fromage, once you've learned to play, is probably only 45 minutes, which is superb. There is a Fromage standalone expansion. I think it's not so much an expansion, but it's Fromage. I think it's called Formaggio, which wildly enough is cheese in Italian, and it's going to be all about Italian cheeses. I'm assuming Pecorino, Parmesan, Reggiano. It's going to be all the hits, all the Italian masters, and that's coming out to crowdfunding next year, I think. Which means you could have 2 groups of 4 playing 2 different cheese games, unless they somehow stack on top of each other. That would be wild. Fromage is great. It's by Matthew O'Malley and Ben Rossett. Art by Pavel Zhoba, published by Road to Infamy Games. I don't know any of those developers, designers, artists, or publishers, but I look forward to seeing more of their output because I enjoyed Fromage. More into that great day, we went straight from there into a game of Nidavellir. And this was our 2nd game of Nidavellir. Nidavellir is on my list of games to get to the table more often in 2025, because we played that once last year and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And we played this with the Thingvellir expansion. Thingvellir is something in Norse mythology. It sounds weird, it's the Thingvellir, but it's a thing. It's a real thing. It's not just they ran out of names. We'll call it Thingvellir because we had Nidavellir. But anyway, I've talked about Nidavellir in fair detail before. Nidavellir is basically an auction game. You have 3 taverns that are filled with dwarves. Yes, this game is heightist. It discriminates. I mean, I guess it doesn't discriminate because the dwarves have all the power. So maybe it's discriminating against tall people. I don't know. I'm not getting into the weeds on this one. But you have 3 taverns filled with dwarves. They're color-coded with symbology on them. They've got some iconography. They might have hammers. They might have swords, or whatever the case is. And you're set collecting. So you're having to weigh up. You've got a number of coins in front of you. You've got 5 coins of differing values, and you're going to use those coins. You're going to place them face down on your player board in each of the different tavern symbols, and you are bidding to win in that tavern. And if you flip that coin over, we're going to the green tavern. We all flip over. If I've got the highest coin, I get to pick first from what's there. And it goes to the next bid down. It doesn't go clockwise, it goes to the next bid down to the last bid. And everyone takes one, throws in their sets. We go to the next tavern. It's super fast. Now, Thingvellir adds basically like a camp. It's not a tavern, it's a camp. And that camp has 5 different cards in it. And they could also be more characters, or they could be artifacts. And artifacts do really powerful one-off things for your set collection. And if on your turn, if you win an auction, you have to win it. If you win the auction, you have the choice of going to the camp and recruiting from the camp. And you get one of these more powerful, more flexible cards. And the people there, for example, the dwarves in the camp, they will often have 2 icons on them, and you don't have to choose where to slot them until later in the game based on how the cards fall, which is fantastic. And if you choose something from the camp, then you also burn one from the tavern that you meant to have purchased from. So you also can cockblock your opponents just a little bit and go, well, I'm going to the tavern, I'm going to take that, but I'm also going to get rid of this card, which I know Dusty and Super Trooper need because it's got a hammer on it. They're both collecting hammers, and I can screw them quite nicely with that. Nidavellir is fantastic. It's quick. I think, if we played it fairly regularly, it would probably be 35, 40 minutes because there's no rules review. You just bam, you slap it out, you set it up. There's another great mechanic where, because you've got 5 coins in 3 taverns, where you can use your last 2 coins in certain circumstances to buy bigger coins from the treasury. So if you have a 3 and a 5, you can buy the 8 out of the treasury, and you have to discard your 5. So your lowest coin ends up malingering for quite some time. There are some unique cards that can help you cycle that out. But if you don't get your lowest coin out through some sort of superpower in the game, you're stuck with a very low coin through the whole game, and that's fine. That's part of the game. I, from memory, got absolutely hosed in this particular game, but love it. Love Nidavellir. It's by Serge Léger, art by Jean-Marie Miguez, and published by GRRE Games, which I am going to elect to pronounce Games. I don't know if it's right. I don't even care. And from there, we went into a game of Harmonies. Harmonies is a house favorite. It's one of Super Trooper's favorite. We love Harmonies. I'm not gonna go too deep down the well of Harmonies because we've talked about it a number of times. But we love playing with the spirit animals, and I think we got Buttercup to the table on this one. I can't even remember now. I could look it up. Thank you. Mild hiatus when I paused and left. Yes, we got Buttercup to the table on this one. And Buttercup loves Harmonies. Super Trooper slaughtered us with his personal best of 101. We have had scores over 100 by all of us at some point, but Super Trooper cleaned the table on this particular day. And we had a great time. An absolute great time. And then that day, what did we play after that? We had a really big day that day. Oh, this was New Year's Eve. We were here day, night. I had a number of people around, and we just played games all day, well into the evening. So after Harmonies, I introduced the whole group to, and look, Bonanza. Bonanza's been around since, 1997 or something? I don't know what. But I bought Bonanza Dahlias quite some time ago. I picked it up on sale. It's something that I've been looking at because I love Beth Sobel art. And Bonanza is allegedly a game that everyone should play once. That everyone should play Bonanza, everyone should experience Bonanza, and having played Bonanza Dahlias, it's exactly the same gameplay, with the exception of one small rule that they've changed. I don't know why they've changed it, and I'm not going to get down to the weeds on that. It's none of my, I don't really care. But Bonanza is a blast. It's at its heart, Bonanza is it's a set collection game where you are absolutely squeezed into a box because you can only really collect 2 sets at a time. And if you have to play a card and it doesn't match, you end up having to burn one of your sets. Now, in between having to play your cards, it's a negotiation game. And Bonanza, at its heart, really is a negotiation game, because if it's your turn, you've got these cards that are plants. They're dahlias you've got to plant in your flower beds. And if you can't plant them, if they don't match what's in your flower beds, you are forcucked. You are absolutely... You've got to rip up your flower beds and plant these, because those are the seedlings you've got. So you want someone else to take them at all costs, because you don't want to have to rip up your flower beds. So you start going around the table and go, hey, anybody want these? And everyone goes, no. So then you start looking in your hand, because in your hand, you have to play your cards in order. And I know I've talked about Bonanza in detail, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time here, because playing it at, I think we played at 5. We played it at 5. It was a much better game than at 3, because there's more opportunities for negotiation. And you can't do 3-way negotiations, unfortunately, but there's much more opportunities for you to get rid of these cards at the table. Because you can go to your hand and go, well, I need to get rid of this card in front of me. If I give you, because you're causing someone to have to rip their plant beds up by having to take this card potentially. Well, you can sweeten it by pulling 2 or 3 more out of your hand and go, well, I can actually give you 3 of those. So ripping up your other dahlia is not so terrible. And then there's a real sweet spot. It's not sidereal confluence, negotiation in the Elysium Quadrant, or whatever it's called, but it's bitey, it's sharp. The Peanut has really come along in her negotiation skills. They've started to translate through into other life skills, in that she washed my car the other day, and I really wanted my car washed, and she wouldn't budge, and she got more money for washing my car than any of my kids have ever gotten for washing my car, and she is 9. And the fox looked at me, and she kind of just gave me the nod over the table of satisfaction, in that Bonanza Dahlias is honing her negotiation skills to the point where she knows what's what and what's worth it. I mean, my car's beautiful. The Peanut washed my car. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. It cost a little more than I would have liked, but thank you, Bonanza Dahlias. Bonanza is fantastic. You know, I really think it's the kind of game that everybody should play. It takes about 5 minutes to teach. It can take a good 45 minutes to play, because it goes round and round and round, and that negotiation goes round and round and round. But that negotiation piece is where the meat is in this game. You know, it's not in the set collection necessarily. It's that negotiation piece. And I really, really like it. It's Uwe Rosenberg. As I said earlier, it's art by Beth Sobel, who does a lot of nature-related art. I'm drawing a blank at this time, but I think Beth Sobel did Wingspan. Maybe I might have that wrong at this point, but I do like Beth Sobel art. And I think she's also done Arboretum. So she focuses and specializes in that kind of naturey stuff. And published by Amigo. That is Bonanza Dahlias. Grab it if you can. Great game. We were getting a little bit wind up at this point, and I don't mean we were winding up, but it was New Year's Eve, and I think the 9 o'clock fireworks had been on, and I think the little ones had taken themselves off for a sleepover, and so we needed something that's a little bit lighter and breezier, and I pulled out Raccoon Tycoon. Raccoon Tycoon. I'm not going to bury the lead here. I really like Raccoon Tycoon. I think it goes a little long unless you jump it. There's ways to jumpstart Raccoon Tycoon, which I ended up doing, not because I wanted it to end, but because I think it was just going to be a better game if we could shorten it a little bit. And the tempo in Raccoon Tycoon is entirely within the control of the players, because Raccoon Tycoon ends when one of 2 market items is, or one of 3 different market items is all gone. So Raccoon Tycoon is an economic game. You've got, I think it's 5 resources, and you have cards that you can play that allow you to collect certain resources and then manipulate the market. So that might give me 2 coal and a wine, a luxury item. And then coal and wine are going to go up in value by 1. Right? That's great. Or it could be 2 wheat, 1 goods, which is a wooden crate, and an iron, and then goods and luxuries go up. It doesn't always align. The market doesn't necessarily go up for exactly what you're taking. Or as an option, you can sell any one good. So the idea is you want to try and drive the price up as far as you can for these goods. You want to have as much of them in front of you, and then I'm going to sell the goods. So if I sell 6 wooden crates, and crates are worth 5 each, I'm going to take $30, but the wooden crates economy is going to get bumped down 6 notches on the track. So it goes boop, 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 boop. And anyone around the table who was saving up crates to try and sell them lets out a huge groan because you can only hold 10 goods at any given time. And this is how you get your money. So there's this one part of the game where you are running the economic market for goods. You're collecting goods. You're trying to drive and push that market up. Then you're trying to sell at the right point, which then drives the market back down. That's one part. Then you have the set collection for railroads. So railroads are purchased by auction. Anytime on your turn, you can initiate an auction. There's 2 railroads in the market. It could be the raccoons or the fat cats. And the fat cats are literally great big fat Persian cats. And this art, I think, is it Annie Stegg? It's Annie Stegg, who does a fair bit of work with this publisher. I'll touch on that later. Annie Stegg doesn't. She's another one that she literally paints her art. It's not done with the pen and pencil or graphics design software. It's done with paints. The thing she do, the art she does is paintings. And so the art in this is fantastic. So anyway, it's my turn. I go, well, out is the foxes, railways. I'm not collecting foxes, but I can see that the fox is collecting foxes. So I call an auction. Foxes come out. I bid $1, whatever the case is. It goes round and round till that railroad is bought. And let's say the fox, I know there's a lot of foxes. The fox is my wife. There's fox railroads. She buys the fox railroads. Great, that's done. The market refills. If you call an auction and you don't win the auction, you get another action. So you can then go buy goods or sell goods or purchase a building or purchase a railroad station, which are the other markets. Or you can call another auction. You go, well, I'm going to call an auction now on this one. And so you can kind of burn through the auction stack a little bit on your turn. Now, there's a risk in that if you're not collecting them, your opponents are, and they're getting their set collections up. And set collections are bonanza bonuses. It's a really great timing mechanic. Now, next to that, you've got railway stations. You can just straight up invest in railway stations. They require goods. So instead of selling goods for money, you're going to trade these goods for a railway station. And if you can pair a railway station up with a railway at the end of the turn, you get points bonuses. And the third thing you can buy are buildings. And buildings sit in a little tableau in front of you, and buildings add special powers. Now, we had the unfortunate turn as we set the game up in that it seemed that the building market was flooded with very expensive buildings. Buildings that cost $15, $18, $20 each. And it didn't move much. There's a lot of buildings that cost $3 and $4 and $5 each. And I think there'd be merit in graduating that market a little bit. And I might house rule it next time I play and just say, I'm going to take all the buildings under 10 and shuffle them, and they're going to go to the top of the stack, and all the buildings over 10, shuffle them and put them at the bottom of the stack. So we have buildings that we're getting at, because it's not going to hurt the game one bit, and it means that those buildings are going to move through a little bit faster. Buildings are also points. Buildings can let you store more goods, so you're not capped at 10. They're all unique powers, and they're fantastic. I do think Raccoon Tycoon maybe goes a little long if you let it. As I said, that timer on that game is if the buildings run out, the railway stations run out, or the railways themselves run out, then the game's over. It's loads of fun. It's breezy. It's a great way to end the night because your decision space is, am I going to collect goods, sell goods, start an auction, or buy something? That's it. And there's no AP because you're looking, the board state changes, but it's not a deep decision space. And it's fun. It's fun. The Peanut plays Raccoon Tycoon. Right, and Raccoon Tycoon's by Glenn Drover of Lizard Wizard and Mosaic. The art's by Jacob E. O'Connor and Annie Stegg. Now, Annie Stegg also does the art for, there's a fairy-based game we have also by Forbidden Games, which we really like in this house. It's light and breezy, but it's also great. And, of course, by Forbidden Games. Raccoon Tycoon. So at that point, that concluded our New Year's Eve. It was a magnificent New Year's Eve of games. And then the following week, we got together, the three of us. That was myself, Dusty, and Super Trooper. I believe. Yes, it was the three of us. And we had one of our normal game days where we play 1 or 2 games. And we played the Voyages of Marco Polo. So, Voyages of Marco Polo. So this, Super Trooper bought this a while ago. I do think this was on his shelf of firsts, unless I'm mistaken. I think it was. And the Voyages of Marco Polo, it's an older game. It's 2015. And, God, how to describe Voyages of Marco Polo in less than 3 hours? And I mean that as a compliment. Voyages of Marco Polo it's a little bit point salad-y in that there's a lot of different things you can do in the Voyages of Marco Polo. There's this great big board filled with action spaces that you've got to travel around to, and you've got dice workers. So Bitoku-esque, you've got dice workers, and the value of the dice dictates what you can go and where you go to. And every player at the table has a unique Capitan, or I'm not sure what the actual parlance is. You've got a unique leader for your tribe, your clan, whatever it is, and they have wild, game-breaking, totally unfair superpowers, whatever they might be, right? But they're all wild. They're all over the place, and they're crazy. So you've got this very specific rule set, and then your guy is like, yeah, well, you can literally just ignore this rule and do whatever you like in this one realm. It's wild. I can't really do this game justice. Like Voyages of Marco Polo, basically you're traveling around the map, and travel is really expensive. However, traveling around the map does a couple of things. One, it has the potential to unlock new worker spaces. So as you get to a new space on the map, you can build a building there, and if you have, then there's a random setup for each of these sort of locations at the start of the game, and out comes all these different worker placement spaces that you can't use unless you've traveled to that city. So there's all the bog standard worker placement spaces, that do all the sort of standard stuff. There's recipe fulfillment, there's recipe collection, there's resource collection, there's resource, I think there's a resource transfer, there's money, there's one you can go to, you just get money. Look, I'm not doing it justice, but rest assured, you can't win unless you're doing a fair bit of traveling, right? And my leader's superpower was I could literally warp all over the board. And I think if I had lent into that more, because Dusty lent right into his, because if you go somewhere where somebody else is, you've got to pay to get into those spaces. So if you're there second, you've got to pay based on the weight of your dice. His superpower was, now I don't have to pay. I'm just coming in, get stuffed, move over, and I'm coming in, and he didn't have to pay. My superpower was I could basically warp all over the board, and traveling is, as I said, it's wicked expensive. And I think I should have looked at that game and gone, right, that's my superpower, that's my game now. I am going to be the Warp Master 5000. I'm going to totally ignore these other parts of the game, and I am just going to go zip, 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 and maximize my capabilities, because as you warp around, you get free resources, you get huzzas, and you unlock these new worker spaces. And I didn't start really traveling until very late in the game, because, as I said, travel's expensive. It really sucks. I'm not doing it justice. I will just say, this is Simone Luciani and Daniele Tascini. These are the Italian masters. It's another one with art by Dennis Lohausen. He's all over in games. I will absolutely play this again. I actually had a fantastic time playing this game. It wasn't an onerous teach. We did watch videos beforehand. It wasn't an onerous teach, but it was great. I've really enjoyed Voyages of Marco Polo. It is published by Hans Im Gluck of the Do Not Use the Word Meeple or We Will Sue You Worse Than Disney. But loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And I think I'd love to play it again soon-ish so that I don't forget. Lean into your power. Lean into your power. And then, because Super Trooper finally finished the great re-sleeving mission of 2024, Super Trooper took a large number of sleeves in a recent crowdfunding campaign and was re-sleeving his entire collection of Dominion, which isn't quite the entire collection of Dominion, but if it's not, it's pretty damn close. And so he'd finished re-sleeving Dominion, and so we got a couple of games of Dominion in. I really like Dominion. I am shocking at Dominion. If I ever win a game of Dominion, it's by accident. I just seem to come unstuck with distractions and not really sort of, I guess, focusing on, because there's so much interplay between the markets. And look, I'm not going to describe Dominion, because if you're listening to me, you probably know what Dominion is. If you're listening to me and you don't know what Dominion is, you're doing this all backwards, because Dominion's been around for ages and it kind of established the whole deck building genre. But suffice to say, Dominion is usually a quick game. There was something about the flop of cards that came out in our second game, because I think we were using a random generator, in that the second game of Dominion we played took a very long time to finish for whatever reason. I can't remember the specifics of it, but it was a very woefully long game of Dominion. No less enjoyable for the fact, but was really looking for ways to end it once we got to that point, because it was going far longer than usually a game of Dominion is 20 minutes. And I think our second game of Dominion was 45, 50 minutes. And Dominion is not a 50-minute game. But thoroughly enjoyed Dominion. It's got a Pirates and Plunder expansion, and anything with pirates is all me all the time. Loved it. That is by Donald X. Vaccarino with art by an army, because there are so many cards, so many expansions. There are a million artists, and it's published by Rio Grande Games. And from there, we cracked out the Fox's Christmas Gift, and we started My Island. Now, if you've been following along at home, you know we recently finished My City. The Fox loved My City. We've been playing My Island, and we've got the Peanut at the table for My Island. My Island, look, if you're tracking anything about My Island out and about, My Island is a legacy game. It's a tile layer. It's by Reiner Knizia. And basically, you're going to start with a board, and you flip a card, and it tells you what tile to place. And there are rules on how you place those tiles. You place the tile, you flip another card, you place another tile. You flip another card, you place another tile, until you can't place any more tiles. And then the round's over, and you score based on how your tiles go out. It's great. My Island, I am really enjoying. It's got a bit of a mixed review out there. There's some people that really bounced off My Island for whatever reason. I have heard anecdotally that the later chapters, so My Island is 8 chapters, 3 games in each chapter, so it's 24 games. I have heard anecdotally that the later chapters get a little wacky with some of the changes. They get very thick and fast, and they almost go a bit too far and too wild, but we'll see. As it sits right now, the Fox, the Peanut, and I are playing. We played 3 games, so 1 chapter, and I really, really enjoyed it. Had a fantastic time. I think the Peanut was in the lead after 2 games. It's fantastic. It's not expensive. My Island is $50-$60 if you're shopping around on Amazon, whatever the case is. We are in Australia, so it is probably 3 times the price of something you might get in North America. But it's great fun. Great fun. I know Super Troopers picked up My Island. Looking forward to playing that with Buttercup and Beelzebubble. And then when it's all done, we will Frankenstein our 2 kids together, maybe get a box that 2 other people can enjoy. That is obviously by the inimitable Dr. Reiner Knizia, art by Michael Menzel, published by Cosmos Games. I play a lot of Cosmos games. And then, for something light and breezy, one of the games I picked up in the post-Boxing Day sales is a teeny tiny little box. And this is an Oink game. I've never owned an Oink game. I've never bought an Oink game. And this is a dexterity game by the name of Drohpolter, which is something like Attract the Ghost in German. It's a poltergeist game. I don't know. Drohpolter. So Drohpolter is the whole game box is about the size of a deck of cards, and inside you've got 5 different little tokens, and the idea is that these are talismans that if you drop the right one, the ghost is going to be happy. You've pleased him with the talisman, and he runs away. So you have these 5 talismans clutched in your hand. And you shake your hand up and you close it. And so they could be anywhere. And then you flip a card in the middle, and it might be a picture of the cookie. So everyone has to, with only one hand, and you can use your fingers in your one hand however you like. You can fiddle around, whatever. You've got to drop the cookie on the table. And whoever drops cookie on the table first has to snatch the ghost meeple with your other hand. And if you get the ghost meeple in your hot little hand, and you've got to snatch the ghost meeple because sometimes 2 or 3 people will drop the cookie at the same time, the person who ends up with the ghost meeple in their hand gets to collect a little brass bell. And you chuck that brass bell in your hand, and you pick the cookie up, and you shake your hand up, and you go again. And you think, oh, this is great. You can get to 3 bells, no problem. Some cards will say you've got to drop the cookie and the gem and the key. And so you've got to fiddle your hand around and fiddle your hand around. You drop the cookie, you drop the gem, and then you drop 2 bells. Well, if you drop the bells, they're gone, because bells are points. Right? So if you manage to get 5 bells in your hand, you win. And you get to your 3rd bell and you're like, this is a dream. No problem, man. I got this in the bag. And then you flip the next card over and you drop 2 out of your 3 bells. And they're gone. They are gone, gone, gone. The bells go back into the middle and you're back down to 1 bell. So, and that's the game. Every round you pick everything up again, except for your bells. You flip a card and you try and drop them with one hand. And whoever gets to 5 bells first wins, or you go through the whole stack of cards. It's not a lot. There's maybe 30 cards in there. When they're gone, the game is over, and whoever has the most bells wins. It is a blast. It is fun. It's frustrating in the most delightful way. and it's Drill Polter. And I think I picked it up for about $17. So I know that will do the circuit around our gaming group because we had a blast. And not board gaming related, but board gaming adjacent, because this is a podcast about board gaming culture, and growing old graciously, and I do all three of those quite regularly. The Peanut and the Fox and I, along with Lou, we went and did an actual escape room. School holidays, we did an escape room. And the Peanut and I, of course, have done a number of exit games. And it wasn't a very hard escape room. It was an entry-level escape room. And obviously it was an escape room that is age-appropriate. So there were no murders or bodies or anything. You know, I don't know how some of these things go. It's our first never done escape room. We chewed that mofo up in 28 minutes. We had 50 minutes to do the escape room. We were out in 28 minutes high-fiving. And the Peanut ate that thing alive. Now, obviously, there were some tricky moments in there. In this particular escape room, it's 3 rooms, and I'm not going to go into detail because I know for a fact, based on our experience, that Super Troopers taking Buttercup and Beelzebubble into this very same escape room tomorrow. And so I'm not going to talk about it in any detail whatsoever. But we did have a blast with it. It involved working your way through a series of 3 different rooms with 3 different multi-stage puzzles in each one. It was awesome. It was so awesome. Not a board game, but the Peanut and I particularly can't wait to do another one. Because we do the exit games, we love the exit games. She thought this was just one of the greatest experiences she has ever had. So, escape rooms. So much fun. Not board games. Board gaming adjacent, we'll call it. And that will do it for the games that were, of which there were so many. Which is a good thing. Good thing for everyone's mental health.
Boxes on the doorstep, new delights inside. Heaven's on fire, fields to divide.
Up this week in incoming, there are some things that are incoming or have just recently incomed. It's not a word, but I'm making it a word. Incomed. Recently, we could say arrived, but let's not do that. So incoming. I picked up in the post-board game sales, and probably for a number of reasons, I picked up a copy of Lords of Ragnarok. Now, Lords of Ragnarok was a recent crowdfunder by Awakened Realms. It's the sequel/spiritual successor to Lords of Hallis, which I never played, but allegedly had 1 or 2, I guess, challenging bits to the gameplay that were, while it was a good game, people enjoyed it, it had some frustrations attached to it. Lords of Ragnarok allegedly both addresses those issues while introducing a host of its own. And I think this is probably why I picked it up for a song. I really did. I picked it up for, Lords of Ragnarok until recently. The Kickstarter version with the stretch goals is selling for $300 Australian. That's for the core box and the stretch goals. Now, I was able to track down a box of the stretch goals from another supplier. But Lords of Ragnarok in Australia right now, you can pick it up for about $57. And I think what's happened is the retail copies have flooded the market and reviews are not stellar. There's only one really bad review that I've seen for this one. And I'm taking that with a grain of salt because it was a full-on rant. I'm not going to name names. If you watch reviews, and you can go watch Lords of Ragnarok reviews, and you will find this review quite easily because it's one of the first ones that will pop up. And it was a full-on rant. It was a full-on tantrum pretty much about the game. And I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because I don't think, looking at it, that it's that terrible a game. The production is off the charts. Of course, it's Awakened Realms. The minis are gorgeous. The boards are gorgeous. The player board's double layered. The punch-outs are amazing. And the stretch goals came with the 5th player and different regions and to be honest, at the price I picked it up for, if I play it 3 times, I'm going to be winning. And it plays solo. I don't know how good the solo is, but it's sitting on my shelf of firsts. It's been punched. It's waiting to go. Lords of Ragnarok on the incoming. It is now on the shelf of firsts. And I just got a shipping notification for Tabriz. Now, Tabriz, you if you're on forums, you're chatting with people, or you're watching photos, and people go, "Oh, this just arrived. I forgot I backed this," and I'd never. It's not that I forgot I backed it, but it wasn't really. I guess with stamping my foot, waiting for Betrayal of the Second Era, and all these other things that have been pre-ordered. Pre-ordered SETI, and I'm waiting for all this stuff. It just I backed Tabriz like I want to say 2.5 years ago, and Tabriz it's this charming little game. I say little. I mean, there's a fair bit to it. It's not going to be a mid heavyweight Euro by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a charming little game that takes place in the Middle East about weaving rugs and going to rug markets, and the production's cute, and it comes with a neoprene mat like Mlem as standard. And Tabriz is by Randy Flynn. Now, Randy Flynn at the time, 2.5 years ago, is the designer for a game I love, and that's Cascadia. And this is a very different style of game, obviously. But I got a shipping notification the other day from Etherworks for Tabriz. So Tabriz is coming. And again, it's not that I forgot it was coming. I've got a list of games. I've got my incoming list in my notes on my phone, so I always know what's coming at any given time. And I've seen it there and seen it there. Going, oh yeah, Tabriz is coming. Tabriz is coming. Whatevs. It's coming, and we'll play it, and it'll be fun. But while I was expecting it, I also wasn't expecting it, because Tabriz suffered a whole lot of major setbacks in their production, in their shipping. They had an issue where the on-shipper that they had arranged to ship their produced stuff, I think, basically folded, and all of their games were sitting in a warehouse for them, and they had to start from square one with negotiating a shipper, and they'd already paid the shipper, and it was a nightmare. And I'd kind of half written it off, thinking, well, it was only a $75 game, whatever it was. It's not going to come. And I was okay with that, because I've been luckily I don't think I've been burnt by any games except for one that I backed way back before I even went down the rabbit hole with Super Trooper and Dusty with Pandemic on that day 4+ years ago. I backed a game that was big and whiz bang, and I didn't really know any better on how to research this stuff at the time, and I was in crowdfunding for other things, kitchen supplies and pots and pans, whatever else, and I got burnt for, it wasn't huge, $150, and so I wasn't worried if Tabriz didn't fulfill, because it wasn't a lot of money, and I've been very lucky in my whatever 50, 55, 60 campaigns I've been involved with that I haven't really been burnt. But it's coming. Got my shipping notification the other day. Tabriz is coming. It'll go on the shelf at first. It looks cute. It looks interesting. The art looks great. And that is on its way. And as you all know, clappers, Chinese New Year is on us imminently. I think Chinese New Year officially is January 29th this year. And, that means no more incoming. If it's not on the water, in the next sort of 10 days-ish, it's not going to be here till March, essentially, because Chinese New Year shuts everything down for a number of weeks. However, on the water, and I know I keep talking about it, but it was meant to land in Botany Bay, Australia today, and that's Betrayal of the Second Era. Yeah, we're still talking about Betrayal of the Second Era. I'm sorry to bore you to tears with that, but I am a mad Skyrim, I'm a mad Morrowind, I'm a mad Elder Scrolls fan, and I love Too Many Bones. And I am just absolutely gagging to see this one arrive. And so hopefully by the end of January, that will have wound its way through the intake of Botany off to Etherworks. And it's only one container. It's only one container, Etherworks. You can do it. You can get that out before the end of January, right? One container? I mean, how hard could it be, one shipping container, right? Can't be that hard. And also shipping imminently is another chip theory simultaneously. They've shipped 2 games simultaneously, and that is the recent expansions for Hoplomachus Victorum. So there is a whole Pandora's Box expansion, which allegedly fits in the same box, which is great, because Victorum's one of few boxes that does not fit in a freaking calyx. So I'm very happy if that all fits in the original box. So that's coming, which means I will have to wrap up my current campaign in Victorum. I'm currently playing Aprilis in the Fool, which is awesome. Loving it. But the Pandora expansions are arriving with some other quality of life things. There's some, metal sword pegs, because if you don't have metal sword pegs, you can't play the game, etc., etc. Yeah, coming. And still waiting on my pre-order for SETI. A few other pre-orders that have been waylaid for a number of reasons. River Valley Glassworks has been pre-ordered. The Gaia Project expansion has been pre-ordered. I saw today that the Arc Nova Map Pack 2 is available in Australia with a few distributors. So I will see if I can track that down without having to pay $10 shipping for a $17 game component, because I love me some Arc Nova. And that is incoming for this week. FOMOMOFO this week. Things are starting up again for 2025, and as always, this is not an exhaustive list of games available on crowdfunding, because that would be very, very boring, but merely a selection of campaigns that appeal to me personally, either because I like the designer or publisher, because the gameplay appeals to me personally, or fills a void in my personal collection. Those voids are getting to be less and less. Okay, that's my problem. Or because the campaign has pretty toys, and sometimes it ticks all of the above. So I've got a few to talk about this week. I don't have a lot of details because they're fairly early on in the piece, but they are things that I'm watching. The first is Ion. I keep wanting to say Iron. It's not Iron. Ion Core. Ion Core launched on GameFound. And to be honest, it launched to a bit of a whimper. This is one that's been trickling through with the ads and ads and ads and build and build and build. And despite 4,400 people, myself included, following this campaign, there's only about 160 backers for less than 30,000 euros. I think I noticed today, maybe just ticked over 30,000 euros. But 4,400 people following this campaign, and not 200 people have pulled the pin on it. Now, there's not a lot of clarity around the gameplay, which I think is not helping the subpar launch. There's not a lot of gameplay. It could be the post-Christmas pinch as well, right? It's January 12th as I record this for you dear clappers and OMC. And I know a lot of people, they're still looking at their wallet going, there's nothing in there, guys. Like, moths and echoes. That's what you can have out of my wallet. And so that's probably not helping either. There's a couple of gameplay videos about. I started watching one of them, which I think is by the game designers themselves. It's hard to watch because wherever they're from, it's like listening to Balky from Perfect Strangers in 1988, and I'm aging myself, and I know 99.9% of you have no idea what I'm talking about. But the accents are so thick on the video that I watched for about 4.5 minutes. I'm like, I just have no idea what's going on. And I'm hopeful for their sake that they get a little more attention on it, because it looks spectacular. It's pew pew spaceships. It's plastic models and toys and but it doesn't seem to be doing much. And I know 200 backers is not going to be enough to make a successful campaign. So I would not be surprised if they pack up their suitcase and maybe relaunch in 2 or 3 months. I would be surprised if they launched a completed crowdfunding with a couple hundred backers, because your economies of scale are zero. And not dissimilar to this, we've got Masters of Orion Ad Astra, which launches in a couple of days. It's another one, spaceships, toys, pew pew, which I love. I keep looking at games like Zaya, which I know is not a pew pew game. It's more of a, recipe fulfillment, pick up, deliver kind of thing. But I love Voidfall, which is less pew pew than you would think. I half enjoyed Twilight Imperium, and I keep looking at, what's the other Twilight Imperium-esque one? Oh, Eclipse. I look at Eclipse and I go, oh, could I get Eclipse to the table? Because it's space, pew pew. Anyway, Masters of Orion, it's based on some video game IP from 1993. It's not a game I ever played, but it's done by Archon Studios, who has been doing video game IP from the 90s. They recently did Might and Magic 3, which is a video game IP that I played the absolute bejewels off of. And that campaign was huge. It was in the 6 or 7 million euros or something. So it'll be really interesting to see how Masters of Orion goes, whether it's going to be more of the same people, because obviously this is aimed at Gen Xers who love that stuff. And I know, not Gen Xers, what was the ones that came next? The Millennials? The Millennials. Who probably still played the game 1993. I don't know, were Millennials playing video games in 1993? Probably. They were still babies. Anyway, I've lost count. I'm Gen X, so I really don't care. It's the problem. But it'll be interesting to see how this campaign goes, because I know they're still trying to... I don't think they've delivered on their their first reprint of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And so I suspect there'll be a lot of people that are holding on to their money going, well, I haven't seen my Might and Magic 3 yet, guys, so I might hold on to this. Or it could just go... It could go bonkers, because they have a history of doing 90s video game IP. Masters of Orion I never played. The game looks great. It's got spunky art. It's got spaceships. And yeah. That's all that I'm kind of half watching right now, but there's a lot coming. And so I just want to drop a taste of some of the campaigns that are coming. And I'm going to do this shotgun style. They're just going to come out rapid fire. Darwin's Journey is getting an expansion, which I think looks fantastic. Love Darwin's Journey. They just announced a new standalone game in the Everdell series called Silver Frost. You can find these by looking on Game Founder, Kickstarter, under Silver Frost or Darwin's Journey. The South Tigers trilogy from Garfield Games is getting expansions for every single one of the games, as well as an overarching campaign called the Moon Saga, which I will absolutely be in for. And also coming are 2 campaigns which look like they're almost exclusively quality of life campaigns, which is really interesting. One is an Ark Nova campaign, which looks like a big box with stuff. And I don't know, like there's no hints as to what that has in it other than the distributor, publisher, designer have said, don't get rid of your base game because this is not base game. They have said there's some new things from the designer. So whether that's new cards, new maps, whatever the case is, I would love to see like a triple layered player board like you have in Voidfall, where you can slide your maps into there and just stop things from wobbling around a little bit. I think that would be fantastic. I don't know how I would feel about plastic kiosks and whatnot that slot in. Maybe, I love toys. Ark Nova gets played a lot at my table as it is, and more toys wouldn't necessarily get it played more. But I'll be watching that one closely because if there's quality of life money, I got money on that they're gonna put money out, because those black squares in Ark Nova are the shittest money in gaming. Honestly, you're designing a game and all you can come up with is black squares with a number on it that you've almost given up. It must have been the last thing they did. Seriously. So surely there'll be some coins with little elephants or popcorn buckets on them or something. There's got to be money, got to be coins. I'll be watching that one closely. And the other one is Catan is getting what I'm calling all the plastic upgrade, which it looks like they're going to be getting a box of, and I don't actually play Catan. I've never played Catan. You can shame me right into the corner. I actually own Catan. I can see it sitting on my shelf at first, still in shrink. It was bought 5-6 years ago. It's sitting there in shrink. And the reason I don't play Catan is Catan requires 3 players. And getting 3 players to the table that all want to play Catan in my house is like, it's like, hey man, when you come, can you bring a purple unicorn? And I would like to have a dragon cheeseburger. 3 players who want to play Catan. I can't seem to get it. I own Catan, but this looks like terrain and boats and bridges and buildings and. So it looks like Catan's getting an all the plastic upgrade, but we'll see. And that's all I've got for you this week on FOMOMOFO, but as it ramps up, expect this to get a little more exhaustive.
Voices in my head, I'm talking to myself. What board game should I get down off the shelf?
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. This week on Voices in My Head, I'm not often serious on one-man clapping, but I think off the back of my interview with Paul Grogan last week, where he shared insights into his world which were completely unexpected to me. Completely and wildly unexpected. When I planned to do this interview with Paul Grogan, where it started and where it ended, it's not that they were in different realms, but it was a place of vulnerability for Paul, where he really talked about his life in a light that I had not expected. And so this week, I want to talk about board games and mental health, because board games have done remarkable things for me personally. And again, I'm not going to bog you down with darkness or sadness or doom and gloom, but rather the positives that came out of board gaming for me that were unexpected, and so a few years back, I'd started playing board games with the boys 4.5 years or so ago. Not quite 4, it's 4+ years ago. And I'd always been into board games my whole life. We'd always had board games in the house. We've always played board games, but I say modern board gaming. And I want to say around that time, things were really dark in my world. I was healthy, and my work was fine. But I have 3 daughters, and one of whom is more than a little special needs. Not in a way that is exhaustive or drains the family. Like, I don't mean to say that we're hard done by. She is a delight and a success and doing wonderful things. But we had issues in our house of trying to help her through her own dark times, which were making it very, very hard on the Fox and I, on the other girls in the house. And I was in a dark place personally. I really was probably drinking a whole lot more than I should have. And, you know, how much you choose to drink, clappers, that is up to you, man. Life is worth living every day of the week. And if life is worth living and that means a bottle of wine or a couple of scotch, I don't care, right? For me, I was drinking too much for me, you know, and I found that I was drinking not for social reasons, not to necessarily enjoy the beverage itself, because I love me a Hennessy. A Hennessy VSOP it's 16 minutes of pure joy. You know, I'm a chef. My whole world's driven around my taste buds and my experiences, and I absolutely love it. I don't have to have half bottle of Hennessy, but there were days when I was having more than I was enjoying. And I think that was, for me, the metric is I was having more than I was enjoying. And it wasn't just that. You know, my wife and I were touched very closely by some very serious suicide attempts in the family, which led to a lot of sleepless nights. And it was a tough time. I'm not going to lie. You know, it was a time when I reached out for therapy, you know, and not a lot of people know that about me. I think my close friends know, and now clappers, you all know. And to be honest, I'd never entertained things like therapy in my life because I didn't believe in it. I poo-pooed it. I'm like, someone else doesn't need to hear about my issues. My issues are my issues. You can all get stuff. They're not for you. You can't possibly help me. What could you know about me? What could you possibly know about me that you could help me? Well, nothing. She didn't know anything about me. But what she did know a lot about was trauma and how to, I guess, deal with that in ways that I wasn't doing. So we're going to park that for now. Because yes, absolutely. I went through a period where I decided I was going to try therapy because I was out of options. I wasn't a very good dad at the time. I wasn't a very good husband at the time. I was struggling with engaging with my family in meaningful ways. And while I was physically healthy and my work life was fine, I had beautiful friends, I wasn't doing the best. I wasn't the best version of myself. Now, I am a good version of myself. And I hold myself, you know, if you listened last week, to a very high level of accountability because no one else does. And I hold myself to levels that no one else can hold me to the bar that I hold for myself. I lowered my own bar at this point because I was just struggling to get through the day. And so, enter solo board gaming. So, enter solo board gaming. 4 years ago, I played a couple of games and we played a few, and my work schedule was so tight I wasn't playing tons and tons. But 6 months, 7 months later, and that's when, you know, I think Super Trooper said, "Oh, you should check out Board Game Geek." And I went, "Okay, whatever, dude. Like, nerd. Just chill." But enter solo board gaming. And I think the first game I bought for me, now, when I say for me, I had bought a couple of games thinking, well, these would be great for our board gaming group. You know, I think Ark Nova was the first big game. I said to the guys, "Hey, this has just come out. It looks like a great game." I don't think it was even in the top 100 at that point. I said, "Let me buy this one. You guys have all the games. Let me buy this one. We'll play Ark Nova." And I'll buy that one. Now, Ark Nova, I played solo. The out-of-the-box solo for Ark Nova, it's fine. It's a timer. I think you've got 27 turns to cross your markers. It's fine. It doesn't simulate another player. It's basically an efficiency puzzle. And I enjoyed it. The first game I bought for me to play solo. And to this day, 3 years on, I've only ever played that game solo, is Gaia Project. Now, I bought Gaia Project and I punched it, put it on the table. Now, Gaia Project has 7 trillion parts in it because there's, you know, 7 different colors for factions, whatever. There's 14 factions. And Gaia Project is a big, meaty, heavy game. And I have a friend who plays Gaia Project, also solo, and he said, "Oh, you'll really like it." And so I thought, well, I'm going to give this a go. And I cracked a bottle of red, and I watched a few videos, and I got to the end of like 2 or 3 videos. I'm like, no real idea what I'm doing, but okay. We'll set it up. Cracked a second bottle of red. And by the time I got halfway through that second bottle of red, I realized that it was a really, really bad idea to be pairing 2 bottles of red wine with a new game that is up in the 4s probably on BGG for weight. Put it all away. Didn't have the bunker that time. It was on the dining table, so couldn't leave anything out. Packed it all up, went to bed, got up the very next day and went, let's do this again. No wine. So watched the video again, got it out, sent my friend a couple of questions. I said, what are you doing this? What does this mean? What does this mean? And he explained it very, very clearly. He was like, yep, no problem. This is what you're looking for. I went, okay. Played Gaia Project solo and loved it. And if I can be honest, I think the night I played Gaia Project solo was the first night in probably 3 months that I had not had a drink at all. So my drinking, the crutch that I'd used it for was something that just snuck up on me. I'll be honest, I think I probably come from a long line of alcoholics looking back at my family history. And I looked at it and I went, you know what? That was a magnificent night. That was the best night I've had in months. And so I played it again the next night. And I didn't win. If you play Gaia Project solo, it's not easy to win. And then I played again the third night. And I wasn't even thinking about wine. It wasn't even on my mind. It's not like I was sitting there tapping my toes going, well, I'm going to do this without having a glass of wine. I played 3 games. Didn't matter. Right? And it was engaging me in a way that I had in that personal solo puzzle that I got to the end of 3 nights and I realized that I had basically slept through the nights, which I had not done in months. I mean, there were nights where the Fox and I were basically taking turns sleeping on the couch. Shay OMC, because we had one of our beautiful children under watch for months. And I got to the end of night 3 and I went, this is fantastic. And I went down the rabbit hole and I thought, well, what else is out there? And it turns out it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Oh my God, it's a lot. And if you've never solo gamed, then that's fine. Like if it's not for you, then it's not for you. I'm telling you, it's for me. It is 100% for me. And board games in general are for me. So that's where, Dusty often says, Hammers, you really drank the freaking Kool-Aid, bro. Like he sits in the bunker and looks around. And in 4 years, I've gone from never played a modern board game to a dedicated room with dedicated lighting and climate control. And I've got 87 Kallax cells. They're not all full. I did a count the other day. I think I've got 41 cells still to fill, which is a fantastic place to be in. Thank you very much. And enter Friday board gaming. So Super Trooper doesn't work Fridays. And so I was able to manipulate my work schedule, I think, largely by selling my business and taking 6 months off. I had a business at the time that was doing very, very well. COVID hit. It was great for my business. It was really, really great for my business. Sold the business. I basically took 6 months off. And so basically, other than being the trophy husband and super dad and, the house cleaner and whatever else, which I love doing, don't get me wrong, I was board gaming now every Friday with the boys. And let me tell you something. That became, for me, my men's shed. Now, don't get me wrong. We don't sit around the table and go, hey, man, how you feeling? Look, I know it's your turn, but what's going on in your world? How you feeling? Like, what's happening? But I can tell you, after 6 months, it's still not how the conversation goes. But we'll be playing a game, and the conversation is far less shallow and transparent than it was when we started. And often we'll talk about, Super say, oh, how's things going with whoever, and we'll have a chat about it. And I'll say, oh, how's this going? And we'll have a chat about it. And we're not sitting around a campfire toasting marshmallows. We're playing a game, and that game is taking 99% of our attention. But that other 1%. we're solving the problems, man. And for me, board gaming has filled a hole in my life that is meaningful. Now, I don't want to overcook it because it's board games. But, I can tell you when I'm feeling like I'm having a rough time or I'm having a day where, for whatever reason, whether it's work or whether it's, people in the world or one of my many daughters or something's happened and I really am feeling out of sorts, I can take myself off to the bunker and I can put something on the table. And that game, it's not that it's escapism. It's not that it helps me ignore what's going on, but it takes me out of that space so that space that I'm in is not my whole world for that 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. Or if it's a rainy Saturday and I want to play 6 hours of Hoplomachus Victorum, or I want to play 8 hours of Agamonia or Tainted Grail, or the boys are coming around and we're going to play. Often the boys come around, we do what's called a day night. They come around at 9 o'clock. We play 3 heavy Euros. And then the wives join us, we have a dinner, and then we play a couple of lighter things, whether that's Charterstone, or we play Mlem, or we play Spots, or we play something that everyone can get around the table and have a big laugh. And we do a day-nighter. And I'll tell you what, I'm a better person because of board games. I can say that honestly and transparently, that at this stage in my life, with the fact that board games started almost as an interrupt for a behavior that I was not excited about. So I wasn't proud of it. I've always been very aware of that sort of stuff because, as I said, I come from a long line of alcoholics, for sure. Parents, grandparents on both sides. We're sturdy peasant Scottish stock. My grandfather waking me up at 5:30 in the morning with 3 fingers of scotch, and I was 16 years old. I'm sleeping on the floor and sleeping back. Merry Christmas. And that's how my life would start, and I'm very comfortable with consuming alcohol. I don't spend my days tapping my toes waiting for the next drink, and it's not that way. It was just one meaningful example I could share with you. There were a few. I wasn't sleeping. I went 9 months without sleeping, and it was partly for fear of what would happen if I did fall asleep. It was partly through anxiety of what was happening in my life and the challenges that they're in, and I'm not going to lie. I was in therapy. I checked myself into a therapist for the better part of a year. And it was about the same time I discovered solo gaming. And those two things together, they made me a better dad. They made me a better husband. They made me a better employee. They made me a better manager. They made me a better person. Those two things together. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't board gaming. It was both of those things. And I've got a lot to be thankful for, and as I said, I don't want to make it doom and gloom, because for me, this is the light side of the dark side. I didn't hit rock bottom. I didn't have any of those issues. I'm not into drugs overly. I'm not into recreational chemicals. They're not legal here, and so I'm like, whatever. I'm not into that sort of stuff. And if you are, if that's what you do for pleasure, that's great. If that's what you're doing to get through the day, I'm sorry. Because doing it for pleasure, doing it to get through the day are two very different things. And there's no judgment in that statement, clappers. It's one of those things that I found that board games made me a better person. And I am grateful. I'm grateful to the people that introduced me. I'm grateful to the wider community because I'm now engaged in a number of forums, both through Patreon, Discord channels, regular Discord channels. I have my own Facebook page. I have chats with people that I now have what I would call board game relationships with. People who maybe in some cases I've only ever met once or twice at a con, a PlayCon or PAX, whatever the case is, and we still chat. We don't chat about deep and meaningful stuff, but we chat about this love we share, this love of board games. And I can tell you, this love of board games, it is not an inexpensive endeavor. It doesn't have to be expensive. And as we've talked about in the past, I'm very lucky with a not insignificant amount of disposable income such that I can surround myself with a whole myriad of experiences. Am I in the mood for a campaign? Am I in the mood for space bees? Am I in the mood for time travel? Am I in the mood for something that's got a story? And I can tell you that more than 9 out of 10 games that I have are playable solo, and they're for that very reason, and that I can sit down and have that experience by myself and the noise of the world and the throb of the world and the bits that will eat you alive are held at bay like a light in the dark. And dear clappers, I know I'm not alone. I've speak to a lot of people about board games. I'm in a lot of forums, and I know that board games hold a special place in our hearts. And for those of you that are in that similar position, high five, brothers and sisters. And for those of you that haven't found that thing for you, I hope you find it. I really do. In Australia, look, this is not a therapy session. This is just me sharing my story. But in Australia, if you are stuck, we've got beyondblue.org.au. I've never used them personally, but there's something you can reach out to. I know that at least one of my daughters has reached out and had positive experiences with this sort of thing. There is stuff out there. Don't sit in the dark by yourself. Find some light. And if that light is spots, if it's if it's land versus sea, if it's underwater cities, if it's Tainted Grail, and you can hear me smiling, guys, because for me, it's the light in the dark. And I'm not in a dark place anymore. I am absolutely not. And I'm very grateful for that. But I'm going to skip forward just a little bit. Normally there'd be a little more preamble to give the clap to someone. And although this may seem a little repetitive, I do want to give this clap to Paul Grogan, because I went into wanting to do an interview with Paul Grogan because I admire his content. I think he presents himself in a way which is borderline unique in content producers, in that he really does have that integrity and accountability that underpins. And I wanted to tug at that thread and say, hey, what's the piece of wool that's attached to this? And he went right down the rabbit hole and said, here you go. Here it is. And this is why. And I came out of that interview just going, wow. And so I want to offer the clap to Paul Grogan for being, as I said, if you haven't listened to that interview, go back and listen to that interview. It's excellent. My clap is to Paul Grogan, not for his game content, not for his presence, not for what he outputs, not for his learn to play videos, but for basically showing me that it's okay to lift the curtain on OMC and say, hey guys, this is the reality of it. So thank you for listening. That's another week of OMC wrapped up. And that concludes this week's therapy session. And don't get me wrong, OMC is 100% my therapy now. And you suckers get to ride shotgun and listen to this. And you start and you go, is this going to get any better? And nope, it's not getting any better. And oh God, hopefully next week is better. Thank you to the listeners who, as always, assume the role of my own personal board game psychologist. I feel better already. You can reach me on all the socials. You can find me on Facebook by searching One Man Clapping. You can email me at wonmanclapping@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at man clapping. And you can join the One Man Clapping Guild on BGG. Subscribe to Guild 4426. And something will be there. It'll be an Easter egg one day. And you guys will get a notification going, hey, One Man Clapping Guild is live. And you can high five yourself to the face for being first. Thank you as always for your time. Thank you as always for your time. This week's episode has been brought to you by caffeine. All the caffeine, and I literally mean all the caffeine. This is a Ron Swanson bring me all your bacon moment. I have 3 daughters. I work. I play games. I stay up late. I do fun stuff. I love to go out. Not socially. I mean, who does that in 2025? Who can afford to? But all the caffeine. Bring me all the caffeine. Thank you kindly. Until next time, get your game on, even if you got to play with yourself. And remember, you're not alone. Peace out, mofos.
Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake.
In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown soul.
Solo gaming. I always knew playing with myself was good for me. Mwah.